A good man's presence is often so steady, so dependable that it becomes invisible, like air, like oxygen. You don't notice how much he contributes to your peace until that peace is gone. His presence becomes something you took for granted, not out of malice, but out of comfort. You assumed he would always be there, that his patience had no limit, and that his kindness was just who he was, not something you needed to protect. But the truth is, even the strongest heart has a breaking point, and even a good man can get tired of being unappreciated. When a good man walks away, it's rarely out of impulse. It's after nights of deep thought, after trying again and again to communicate what he feels, after giving more than he received for far too long. His leaving is not about revenge or ego, it's about peace. It's about finally choosing himself after being the one who always chose you. That's when the reality hits. Because the moment his presence disappears, everything shifts. The silence in his absence feels heavy. The energy in your space changes. You start to notice how much effort he actually put in. The little things that once felt normal, the good morning texts, the way he checked if you were okay, the calm way he handled your moods, suddenly become memories that play in your head on repeat. And then the realization begins to sink in slowly, painfully. You begin to see the difference between someone who says they care and someone who truly shows it. You start to understand that a good man's love isn't loud, but it's consistent. He doesn't seek attention for his loyalty. He simply stands by you. He doesn't promise perfection. He gives effort, understanding, and patience. And when you lose that, you lose more than a person. You lose emotional stability, comfort, and safety. You lose someone who genuinely wanted to see you win, even when you were difficult to love. You lose someone who saw your flaws and stayed anyway. Days start to feel different. The comfort you once had begins to fade. You replay conversations and wish you had listened more, cared more, appreciated more. The things that once annoyed you now feel precious. You remember the times he tried to tell you how he felt and you brushed it off. You recall moments when he went quiet, not because he didn't care, but because he was tired of being unheard. That's when guilt and clarity meet, when you finally realize how easy it is to overlook the person who made love look easy. It's not until he's gone that you understand the emotional labor he carried for both of you, how he steadied the relationship, how he calmed your storms, and how his presence silently built the balance you lived in. When he's no longer there to catch your fall, you start to understand that his love wasn't ordinary, it was rare. You begin to see that good men don't just walk into your life every day, and when one does, he's not there to complete you, but to support you while you grow. Losing him becomes the moment that changes how you see love forever. Because when a woman loses a good man, it's not just the end of a relationship, it's the beginning of awareness. The awareness of how much he mattered, how much he gave, and how deeply his presence shaped her world. When a good man finally withdraws his presence, it doesn't happen with noise or chaos. It happens quietly. One day, the calls stop coming. The good morning texts vanish. The tone that once carried warmth becomes distant. At first it seems subtle, like he's just busy or preoccupied, but then the silence starts to stretch and you begin to feel it, not just hear it, but feel it, in your chest, in your thoughts, in the moments where you used to rely on him to fill the emotional gaps. His silence begins to echo, not because he's trying to punish you, but because it's the only thing left to say when words have lost their value. A good man's silence isn't passive. It's powerful. It carries the weight of everything he once expressed, everything he once hoped you would understand. He's not yelling, he's not arguing, he's not explaining anymore, because he already did that countless times. His silence becomes a reflection of every moment you dismissed, every emotion you downplayed, every time he tried to tell you how he felt and you thought he was overreacting. His absence becomes a mirror, forcing you to see yourself through the eyes of someone who gave everything and received too little in return. At first, that silence feels uncomfortable but manageable. You tell yourself he'll come back. You convince yourself that he just needs time. But as the days pass, that silence starts to change shape. It becomes heavy, like a presence of its own. You start noticing the space he used to fill, the energy, the calm, the emotional security. The world starts to feel louder, but his silence remains the only sound that truly reaches you. That's when the emotional echo begins. The memory of his voice, his laughter, his reassurance, looping in your mind, reminding you of what used to be. You remember how he would listen, even when you didn't make sense, how he would show up, even when you didn't ask. You remember the comfort of knowing someone had your back without you having to question it. And now, with his silence, you realize how much safety there was in his presence. Every unanswered call, every text that stays unseen begins to carry meaning. His silence becomes a language of truth, saying everything words could never express. It tells you he's done explaining, done proving, done waiting for you to recognize his worth. The emotional echo isn't just about missing him, it's about facing the emptiness his presence used to fill. You start to see that he wasn't just a man, he was an anchor, grounding you when life felt uncertain. His silence now exposes every part of you that depended on his stability. It forces you to confront the emotional imbalance that existed while he was still there. You realize that his love was never loud because it didn't need to be. It was his consistency, his steadiness, his quiet reassurance that spoke the loudest. And now that same quietness in his absence becomes deafening. There's a strange pain in realizing that someone's silence can speak volumes. It's not filled with anger or bitterness, it's filled with truth, the kind of truth that can't be ignored. It tells you that you lost someone who didn't just talk about love, he lived it, practiced it, embodied it. And now his silence has become a teacher. It teaches through the void it creates, through the peace you no longer feel, through the stillness that now surrounds you. Every day without his voice becomes a reminder of how much meaning his presence held. You begin to replay moments that seemed ordinary, the calm in his responses, the patience in his tone, the way he chose peace over pride. You remember how effortlessly he brought balance and how easily you mistook that balance for something guaranteed. Now, the silence replaces all of it. And in that silence, you finally hear the things you never listened to before. His unspoken exhaustion, his quiet disappointment, his decision to choose peace over being misunderstood. Because when a good man goes silent, it's not the absence of communication, it's the presence of truth. His silence doesn't come to hurt you, it comes to show you what words could never make you understand. When a good man loves, it's not just about affection or attraction, it's about investment. He invests his time, energy, and emotions into building something meaningful. His love isn't performative, it's purposeful. Every gesture, every action, every word carries intention. He pays attention to details, the way you speak, what makes you smile, what drains your energy, and what brings you peace. He remembers things you forgot you even said. His love shows up in the smallest of ways, often unnoticed, because it's not about impressing you, it's about understanding you. But the truth is, effort from a good man can easily be mistaken for simplicity, because he doesn't make grand gestures to seek validation. He doesn't advertise his loyalty or his care. He simply gives and gives consistently. He becomes your emotional constant, the one who steadies you when life feels chaotic. You start to depend on that presence, that predictability, that emotional availability. And in time, his quiet effort can start to blend into the background, like something guaranteed. It's only when that effort stops, when he finally decides to pull back, that its true weight becomes visible. A good man's effort isn't just about physical acts, it's about emotional labor. He listens when you talk about your fears. He stays patient when you shut down. He supports your dreams even when they challenge his own comfort. His investment isn't transactional, it's selfless. He doesn't love to gain something, he loves to give stability, and yet that same depth of commitment can be overlooked because it doesn't demand attention. His love doesn't shout, it hums quietly in the background, holding everything together. When that kind of effort goes unappreciated, something within him begins to change. It doesn't happen overnight, but gradually. He stops sharing his thoughts because he feels unheard. He stops planning surprises because they're met with indifference. He stops checking in, not because he stopped caring, but because he got tired of being the only one who does. His love starts to wither, not from lack of passion, but from exhaustion. Loving deeply takes strength, and even the strongest hearts get tired when they're the only ones trying. The value of effort often becomes clear in hindsight. You start to notice the void where his energy used to be. You realize that it wasn't just his presence that mattered. It was the consistency of his care. It was the way he made things easier without ever making you feel small. It was the way he handled problems with calm while silently carrying the emotional weight you didn't even see. His effort was the glue holding things together, the invisible hand keeping the relationship balanced. And once that hand lets go, everything starts to feel unsteady. The emotional balance he provided becomes obvious only when it's gone. You start to understand that effort is love in motion. It's how love breathes, how it grows, how it sustains itself. A good man's effort is his love language. It's in the way he shows up even when he's tired, in the way he listens when words fail you, in the way he gives you space but never distance. His effort is the foundation that makes love feel safe, not just exciting. And when that foundation is gone, everything else begins to collapse. That's when realization begins. When you finally see how much energy he poured into your happiness. You remember the times he chose patience instead of pride, the times he chose forgiveness instead of resentment, the times he stayed when walking away would have been easier. His effort was his expression of love, and it was constant. He didn't give up because he didn't care. He gave up because his effort stopped being seen. The quiet strength behind his love becomes something you only understand in its absence. When the texts stop, the warmth fades, and the emotional support disappears. Because when a good man loves, he doesn't just give affection, he builds an emotional home. And when that home no longer feels valued, he leaves it behind, taking with him all the effort that once held it together. When a good man walks away, the first thing that changes isn't always visible. It's not in the messages, not in the phone calls, and not in the space he leaves behind. It's in the energy. You start to feel it in the small moments of your day. The calm he brought begins to fade, replaced by a strange restlessness that you can't quite name. Where there was once stability, there's now uncertainty. Where there was once warmth, there's now an emotional chill. The peace he carried with him was subtle but powerful, and once it's gone, the imbalance becomes undeniable. A good man's energy is steady. It's not about dominance or control, it's about grounding. When he was there, he had a way of bringing calm even in the middle of conflict. You realize that he wasn't just peaceful, he created peace. He diffused tension before it turned into conflict. He brought clarity when emotions got tangled. His presence was the balance between your chaos and your calm, and without it, everything starts to feel louder and less controlled. The shift in energy doesn't just happen around you, it happens within you. You start to notice your own reactions changing. Little things that once didn't bother you suddenly feel overwhelming. You feel more anxious, more uncertain, more reactive. That's because he used to be the emotional anchor in your life. His presence didn't just bring peace, it taught your emotions how to settle. His consistency created a rhythm that helped you regulate yourself, and now that rhythm is gone. The imbalance makes you realize just how much of your emotional world was influenced by his steadiness. His calm wasn't weakness, it was strength in its purest form. It's easy to overlook the kind of strength that doesn't shout or show off. But the man who chooses calm over chaos, who chooses patience over argument, who chooses understanding over ego, that man carries an energy that transforms everything around him. When that energy is gone, the void it leaves behind can feel unbearable. You begin to understand that peace isn't just about the absence of conflict, it's about the presence of someone who knows how to protect your emotional safety. The chaos that replaces his peace doesn't come from anger or blame, it comes from contrast. You start to see how much noise you used to make when he quietly brought silence, how much confusion you used to carry when he gently brought clarity. You realize how many times he steadied situations before they could fall apart. And now that he's gone, everything feels a little more fragile, like the foundation beneath you isn't as firm as you thought. That's when it hits you that his peace wasn't passive, it was active. It required effort, patience, and emotional maturity. Without him, even ordinary days start to feel different. There's a tension in the air that wasn't there before. The emotional safety net is gone, and you start to feel exposed. You begin to miss the little things, his calm tone during disagreements, the way he chose silence instead of harsh words, the way his presence alone could ease your anxiety. You start to see how his energy shaped the entire atmosphere around you. The stillness you once mistook for distance was actually stability. The quiet you once misread as indifference was actually peace. And now in his absence, you begin to feel the weight of what that peace truly meant. His energy wasn't just something he gave, it was something he sustained. It was the invisible force that held you both together when emotions tried to pull you apart. Once it's gone, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. The world feels louder, heavier, and emptier. And that's when you finally understand that peace was never situational. It was him. There comes a moment after he's gone when everything slows down. The noise of anger, pride, and denial begins to fade. And what's left is silence, the kind that forces you to look inward. That's when self-reflection begins. It's uncomfortable, almost painful, because it's not about blaming him or defending yourself anymore. It's about seeing things as they were, not as you wanted them to be. You start to revisit conversations, replay moments, and piece together the times he tried to express how he felt but couldn't find the right words. You begin to realize that what you once dismissed as overthinking or sensitivity was actually emotional truth. In reflection, the smallest details start to stand out. The tone in his voice when he said he was tired, the pause before he responded to your frustration, the look in his eyes when he tried to explain his feelings, knowing you weren't really listening. At the time, those moments seemed insignificant, maybe even dramatic, but now they echo with meaning. You see how his patience wasn't endless. It was his last attempt at holding things together. You realize how he kept showing up even when he felt unappreciated. And slowly, regret begins to set in. Not because you meant to hurt him, but because you didn't recognize his silent pain soon enough. Regret doesn't arrive all at once. It builds quietly, layer by layer, as you start to understand the difference between attention and appreciation. You remember how he made things easier, emotionally, mentally, even physically, without ever making it seem like a burden. You recall how often he forgave without being asked, how he tried to understand you even when you didn't try to understand him. And now, as you look back, those moments start to feel like missed opportunities. Times you could have met his effort with gratitude, times you could have chosen empathy over ego, patience over pride. Self-reflection is rarely gentle. It forces you to see your patterns, how you pushed him away with words you didn't mean, how you took his calmness for weakness, how you thought he would always stay no matter how much you tested his limits. It's not just about missing him, it's about recognizing your own emotional blind spots. You start to see how easy it is to love someone's presence, but forget to nurture their peace. You realize that love isn't just about having someone who stays, it's about creating a space where they want to stay. As the memories replay, you begin to connect the dots. The way he distanced himself slowly, not out of anger, but out of resignation. The way his messages became shorter, his voice quieter, his eyes a little more distant each time. Those weren't signs of indifference. They were signs of a man trying to protect his heart after giving too much. You start to feel the weight of what he carried, the effort he made, the love he gave freely while hoping you'd one day see its depth. And that's where the real ache comes from. Not from his absence, but from knowing he was always sincere while you were still learning how to appreciate sincerity. The regret grows deeper when you realize how rare his kind of love truly was. You remember how safe he made you feel, how easy it was to be yourself around him. You remember the comfort of knowing that no matter how bad the day was, he'd find a way to make it better. Now those memories turn into lessons. They teach you that love without gratitude is fragile, that consistency without appreciation eventually fades, and that even the strongest hearts need reassurance. In that space of reflection, you begin to understand that losing a good man isn't just about losing love, it's about losing emotional balance, understanding, and peace. You start to see that his love wasn't something ordinary, it was rare, patient, and steady. And maybe, deep down, you realize that he didn't just love you. He tried to teach you how to love better, how to value presence over pride, how to understand that peace in a relationship isn't automatic. It's earned through respect, empathy, and care. And when you finally reach that point of self-awareness, you start to wish for one more chance. Not to fix everything, but just to thank him, to tell him you finally understand the depth of what he gave, the weight of what he carried, and the quiet beauty of the love he offered so freely. There's a certain kind of clarity that only comes after loss, a painful kind, the kind that arrives too late. When a good man walks away, the lesson doesn't come with anger or blame. It comes with silence, reflection, and the slow realization that what you lost wasn't just a partner, but a mirror showing you what love should feel like. Losing a good man becomes a turning point, a wake-up call that forces you to see yourself, your patterns, and your choices through a lens of truth. It's not about punishment, it's about awakening, because sometimes it takes losing something pure to recognize how rare it was. In the beginning, it's easy to tell yourself that you'll move on, that life will return to normal, but as time passes, you start to understand that not all people are replaceable. His consistency, his calmness, his patience, those weren't ordinary qualities. They were the foundation of emotional safety, the kind of peace most people spend years searching for. When he was there, you might have thought his steadiness was boring or predictable, But now in his absence, you see that stability was his way of loving you. He didn't chase drama, he built peace. He didn't promise forever with words, he showed it with actions. And that's when the lesson begins, realizing that love isn't about intensity, it's about consistency. The wake-up call comes when you start to reflect on what you valued and what you overlooked. You begin to see how often people chase excitement and overlook peace, how they crave passion but forget that peace is what sustains love when passion fades. You remember moments when you misunderstood his calm as emotional distance, when you confused his patience with weakness, when you thought his quiet nature meant he didn't care enough. Now you see that he cared more than anyone else ever could, he just expressed it differently. His love wasn't loud, but it was lasting. His kindness wasn't dramatic, but it was genuine. As the lesson deepens, you start to understand that losing a good man changes your perspective on what love should look like. You begin to crave what you once had but didn't appreciate, the kind of love that listens, that forgives, that stands beside you even when things get hard. You realize that not every man will hold space for your emotions, not every man will stay patient through your moods, not every man will make peace a priority. The realization hits hardest when you try to find that energy again and discover that it's rare, that good men don't love with conditions or games, they love with loyalty, and that kind of love doesn't come around often. The true wake-up call isn't just about missing him, it's about seeing the parts of yourself that weren't ready to receive his love fully. You start to see how your own fears, pride, or emotional immaturity created distance. You notice how easy it was to take his steadiness for granted while being drawn to chaos that felt exciting but never secure. Losing him teaches you what real emotional maturity looks like. It's not in how much you love someone, but in how well you handle the love they give. It's about learning that peace requires effort, and appreciation must be shown, not assumed. Over time, the lesson becomes less about regret and more about growth. You begin to carry what he taught you, not through words, but through the way he treated you. You start to notice that his influence remains, shaping how you think, how you love, how you respond. You become more aware of how you communicate, how you listen, and how you show gratitude. His absence becomes your teacher. It shows you the value of emotional balance, the importance of gentleness, and the power of love rooted in respect. And while the pain of losing him doesn't fade overnight, it transforms. It turns into understanding, into wisdom, into a quiet promise to never take love like that for granted again. The ultimate lesson of losing a good man isn't just about heartbreak. It's about awakening to the truth that real love requires awareness, presence, and effort. It's about realizing that peace is rare, loyalty is sacred, and that sometimes the greatest lessons in love come from the ones who leave when they've given all they can. In the end, losing a good man becomes more than just a memory. It becomes a mirror, reflecting everything you didn't see when he was still there. His absence teaches what his presence tried to show, that love isn't proven through words, but through consistency. That peace isn't found in excitement, but in emotional security. And that real connection isn't loud, but deeply felt. When a woman loses a good man, she doesn't just lose love, she loses a part of her emotional grounding. The silence that follows his departure carries lessons no argument ever could. It teaches her the true value of patience, effort, and respect. It forces her to understand that good men are not replaceable because their love is rooted in substance, not performance. And as time passes, she begins to see that his leaving wasn't an act of cruelty, it was an act of clarity. It was life's way of showing her what genuine love feels like, so that she never confuses it again. The regret becomes wisdom, the heartbreak becomes transformation, and through the pain, she learns that losing a good man isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of self-awareness, the point where growth begins, and the moment where truth finally takes its rightful place.